It's Market Day Report. We're so glad you're with us here to start your Thursday morning. How about we start by looking at the overnight trade for corn? Let's start there. Hey, it was higher in the overnight session. Will we break out of the doldrums? 4 losing days in a row. Now, we are talking about the weekday as what has happened during the day trading, but the December up 4 3/4 at 406. Quickly to beans before we head off to Springfield, Missouri, but November at 9.89. That's 4.5 higher. Let's go to the president of Midwest Market Solutions, Brian Hoops. Hey, Brian, as we start this morning, I didn't notice any flash sales, but we do have export sales.
Well, I'm going to correct you, Tony. We did have a couple private sale announcements this morning, so surprise there for you. 107,000 corn sold to Mexico and 105,000 corn sold to Guatemala. So we did have some export business on private nature of corn and a big export sales report for new crop corn. Our old crop was small as we're rolling out of these old crop sales and moving a lot of it into new crop as the marketing year is getting closer to coming to an end. But we're already well above the pace needed to hit the USDA forecast for old crop exports. So next Tuesday, we would expect USDA to increase their export forecast for old crop corn. Sales only, 6.5 million bushels, but new crop corn, 124.5 million bushels. That's a big number. And so when you look at it from a historical perspective, for this week of last week of July, early August, second largest weekly sales for this week in history was announced this morning. That's a big number. A lot of it was to an unknown destination. A good portion of it went to Mexico as well. And our year-to-date sales for new crop corn now are double what they were a year ago. About 460 million bushels sold so far this year. Last year was about 230, and of course, last year's old crop has ended up to be one of our biggest numbers of all time. So we're off to a great start, needless to say, and that should help us find some support in this corn market. Soybean sales not quite as strong. Old crop beans, 17 million bushels. New crop at 20. Nothing wrong with those numbers. And wheat was a strong number, over 27 million bushels. So great start to our morning anyway, with strong export numbers, a little bit of a rally in the grains, and then some private sales.
All right, and before we go to break, how about a quick look at what wheat did in the overnight session before we start the day trading? And Chicago wheat overnight higher, up 8.5 at 517. Hard red in the overnight session up 7.5, 519. And we'll see whether or not Minneapolis can break out of the funk. It's been lower 4 straight sessions, mixed trade in the overnight, and finally the cotton market higher in the overnight session. We'll take a break, be back in a moment. Market Day Report continues after this. Cash sales, we did see some already this week in the South. Well, specifically a few in Texas at 237, but asking prices today in the South 240 and in the North 250. Let's go to the markets and live cattle futures. Yesterday, we rang the bell, 236.50 on the August. I believe that's an all-time high for live cattle. Now, we settled at 236.30, which was 202 higher. Same story here on the feeders, ringing the bell at 345.35, but settling just below that 345 level. And then over to hogs. Hogs in the session yesterday, mostly lower. August was the one exception. Brian Hoops, Midwest Market Solutions. Okay, thoughts here?
Yeah, the cash trade was on the Fed Cattle Exchange, about 500 head at 237. So generally considered positive because that's $2 better than last week's exchange numbers. Still looking for Southern Plains trade, Northern dress trade to develop. And, we're seeing high asking prices, 238 up to 242 in the Southern Plains. Cash is called higher. The cutouts have really responded nicely this week. They've rebounded sharply. We're up over $4 in choice and select yesterday after seeing gains again on Tuesday. So very strong cutouts have helped out the packer margins turn a little bit more friendly. and that in turn has the feedlots bullish. So we're seeing optimism over this week's cash trade. We rallied August futures right up until last week's cash numbers, so we're going to have higher cash trade. Otherwise, we could actually start talking about deliveries, which is something we haven't talked about for a long time. Feeder cattle, something else we haven't talked about a long time is the futures holding a large premium to the index. It's now about $9, and we haven't seen that type of premium for a really long time. Usually that's kind of bearish when you see futures over that much over the index. So that may encourage a little bit of selling. Certainly didn't yesterday, as we were sharply higher, as you mentioned, new all-time highs. But yeah, we're expecting to see some gains again this morning at some point here in the feeder cattle, and optimism over that cash market whenever it comes in, either today or tomorrow.
All right, Brian Hoops is with Midwest Market Solutions. We'll see you back here tomorrow.